get a call from Fritz, and he was like, would you like to be the space resident? And I was like, yes. And then I always remember going to space, walking in the office, and then Fritz was like, look, these are your cards. Everyone got a business card back then. And my name alongside the space logo, and that was just like a wow moment for me. The first space opening where they did the car park, Carl Cox was playing, and I'm talking to this girl, and then suddenly the drums come in, and I was like, that's my record. And I ran up to Carl, and they were like, no, you can't go in. I said, no, I'm the DJ, I'm the resident. And then I went, this is my record. He went, John, I've been playing this record. And that again was a remarkable moment. And then looked up, you got like 5,000 people there, just like jamming to my record.
Mr. Ulysses, thank you very much for joining me.
Yay.
I had one of your friends on here yesterday, a Mr. Tristan Ingram.
Oh, one of my best friends, best man at my wedding.
Yes.
The very, very humble, good guy that I absolutely adore. He's one of my best friends. We go back from the Club 1830 days.
He did say that. He did say we dived right back to 1999. Started there with our conversation, and we kind of decided to do this because we've got a really active One More Time community, and we found that our content, the best content that we do, is always the behind the scenes stuff, and people are really interested in the characters, how it works, where they come from, the history. Like if I put a picture of S Paradis with the roof open in 1990, it'll get 1,000 likes, and if I put something up, a new track from today, it'll get 10. Yeah, it's just like the nostalgia is so powerful.
That's very true, actually, because what you're saying there is what I've noticed is few people have put things up from the past, even stuff that I've seen on YouTube of me DJing at Space, and they always get a reaction, And
I know the videos you're on about.
Yeah, nights of the
turntables.
Nights of the turntables. He put one up, and of me.
John Ulysses, it's resident. Last year too, huh? It's fun, it's fun. Every year, Thank you very much.
It's an old video where I'm playing Indirect Gold Rush on the old terrace of Space, and the place is just going crazy. And there isn't so many videos that were taken back then, and that was one of them, and it gets thousands of likes.
If you remember the first ever One More Time we did before COVID, I used that video, one of those videos, as an advert. And I remember I was running it as an ad. And it was you at the Space. And, and honestly, I think I have possibly, because of the Ibiza Worker Group as well, I think I have one of the biggest libraries of old stock footage and images. Because I get sent them all from people.
Of course.
Random people all the time. And
the funny thing is, with your, when you started that page, I always wanted to put some stuff on there because I've got loads. But, it's a bit contentious, obviously,
Absolutely. We had to
go be careful with how I do that, you know what I mean? So I chose not to do it. But, one day I might just upload loads of stuff on there and just be like, fuck it. Oh, sorry. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, of course you are. Of course you are. We had to put the group private really quickly. There was some really worried people out there. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe that I've just seen that photo of me from the 1990 or 1999 doing that at manumission and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it was honestly, the group was an accident. I was bored one day and I was speaking to Dwayne.
I think it even got a mention in like the Times or something like that.
Yeah, no, lots of media attention to it, and it got 7,000 members in 3 days.
Wow.
And people were like getting their main feed and the group feed mixed up. It was just constant Ibiza memories for about 2 weeks. And if it wasn't for that group, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
Wow.
Without a doubt. That's crazy.
And I still sometimes upload my new stuff on this, you know.
It's not as active as it used to be.
Yeah.
But
because things move on.
Yeah. The page of the One More Time event and page kind of went on from it, and
that's good.
Yeah, me and Nick have had a good chat about everything this year, and we're bringing back some old faces for September as well. We're going to hopefully get some people over for Kevin and Perry, like Dean Schminke.
Oh my God,
he hasn't played over for a while, so we're going to get him over to play with Gary, and you're over a couple of times this year.
Yeah, I am.
You're over on the 19th of June, 24th of July, aren't you?
That's right.
Yeah. Awesome.
Usually I just do the ones, but you know, Nick's had me down for the 2, and you know, I'm going to be doing yours instead of doing Clockwork Orange.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I've done Clockwork the last 3 or 4 years, so for me, it's like, you know, yeah, I'm quite happy that, you know, I'm doing something alternative. It's nice to change it up, you know what I mean, for them as well it is for me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they swap things up quite a lot, don't
they?
Yeah.
They swap things up. But I think it's good to get, you know, you can't be expected to play for everyone every year all the time. You know,
this is the problem, because just say when you played at Kevin and Perry at Amnesia, you smashed it. It was an excellent set, and people talk about it all the time, and they talk about you all the time at one more time. But it's impossible to keep on having the same DJs on the lineup. And we would love to have the same lineup.
Yeah.
But Nick's a very experienced booker, and he's
very
like
astute.
I've got to change it up. I've got to swap, and it's different again this year. You know, and obviously then we've got God's Kitchen coming in as well. Which is but the pressure on him to deliver different lineups consistently. But we've got more One More Time events this year, which is good.
Okay.
But yeah, he really does. He really does make sure the music is spot on, no matter what date it is, and he's got that knowledge where he knows in May you're going to have the youngsters, in June you're going to get the more clubby people, in July. August more Italian, September the oldies, the trance will work, you know. And because he's been booking for 20 years, he naturally knows where,
and he knows where to put the DJs on at the right time, which sometimes I think is really important.
Yeah,
you know, using Vicky at the end as the resident, and then putting the DJs, whoever on first is maybe a bit mellower, and someone that can push it a little bit more later on, and then let Vicky just finish it off. Like, you know, the selection of the DJs at the time of when they're playing is paramount. Like, I've
also not having too many DJs.
Yeah. So you can tell your own story within the time that you've got, an hour and a half, 2 hours. You can tell your own story rather than cramming everyone in an hour.
5 minutes even, you know.
I mean,
some sets. Can I kick off with one big question?
Yes.
And I want to know this myself. How did you become resident at Space Ibiza?
So, I mean, you remember me from back then. I was
I
was a bit of a character back then, you know, and I was a bit of a guy in the center of the circle in my, you know, like I was determined to do something somehow. If you remember Ibiza Uncovered, you know, I had my own part of that, you know, in Ibiza Uncovered. Once I saw the cameras there, I made a beeline for the cameras.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I had an article written about me in The Sun, in the Ibiza Sun, when they used to do separate printings with,
I remember.
From it was kind of the same as in England, but they'd have their own little articles of characters, depending on the islands and whatever. So once I knew that they were journalists, I'd make a beeline for the journalists. And obviously I went to Space as a punter. Used to hear Brandon and Alex, and this is in the old terrace where the bar was, where the DJ stand was behind the bar. And, Tony Neto used to play there. Carlos Diaz used to play there. And this is, you're talking like 95, 96. I used to always go there, and it was my dream place to play. Obviously at that time I was at Simple's, a Simple Art Club, and we were doing our own thing there and trying to do, well, I think we broke boundaries for what we was doing in Simple's at the time, because we really, it was just a small little bar, but we really tried to change the image of it just being a small little bar, but a place where people would go to before they went out. And Julian was very open to ideas that I had. Some of them worked, some of them didn't, but we also had to be careful because we used to work very closely with the groups, the 20s, Club 1830 and so on. But we had to build our own reputation. So no one at that time was doing R&B, hip hop, soul. No one at that time was doing booking DJs, and we were. But I kind of grew out of Simples. I was growing, and I could feel that I wanted to do more. But Simples was my bread and butter, my tapes, my CDs. That was was a few grand for me at the end of the summer. And plus whatever they paid me. So that was my bread and butter. That would make me have some money to bring home. It would make me have some money to live there and live comfortably. But I was outgrowing Simples, and I always wanted to move. And so one day when I was at Simples, we're talking, this is in 97, like Pepe Roselló used to know the owner of the bar that was across the road from Simples. Can't remember what it was called back then. And I used to always have my dinner there before I started my shift.
Before Kremlin.
Yeah, it was a restaurant.
Photos. I was around then.
Yeah,
in the photos, it was a restaurant. Yeah,
it was a restaurant then, and I used to always have my dinner there, and then I'd go into work. And then Pepe knew that I would always go to Space, and I would give Fritz my bio, and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm a DJ. I want to play at Space. Let me play. And I'd give him my bio, and I'd drop CDs in. I'd go in there with 20, 30 CDs, and I'd give them all to the staff. The bar staff. I'm a DJ, have a CD, I'm a DJ. Because I thought, you've got to kind of make your own luck, or it's not going to happen for you. And that is as in life. You've got to make your own luck. You've got to take your own opportunities. And I always remember Yvonne, now she's an estate agent. She remembers she was having a meeting with Fritz, and she was like, looked on the desk, and my bio was on the desk. And she came back to me and said, yeah, I would have had a meeting with Fritz, and your bio was on his desk. And I was like, yeah, I'll probably bring one in there every week. I go in every week, bring him a bio, give him some CDs, go into the office, give all the staff CDs. So, one night I'd finished work. I was at work, and then the guys that own the restaurant came running across the road, and they said, "Oh, John, we've got Pepe Roselló on the phone who wants to know if you can DJ at Space in the morning." Really? Yeah. And remember, in them days, I would do from 8 till 6. So he said, and they need you to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning. I was like, okay. So I took my records. I went down with Lee Ward. I was like, yeah, it's supposed to be to play. And they said, okay, let's go. We jumped in the car, went there. They opened the terrace at 10. And they said, yeah, you just got to pay for a few hours from 10 till, 12, maybe 1. And then I said, okay. But I ended up playing till 4. So I kept everyone in there till 4. And then in 98, I sort of was harassing them, let me play. And then at this stage, in 98, I'd left Simples. At that time, I was sort of doing Twice as Nice. I was doing Miss Moneypennies. And I was doing the odd thing as well. I was doing the occasional La Troya at Privilege then, and I was doing the occasional Amnesia on a Monday night, every alternative Mondays. But then it was always empty because Manumission was kicking off, but I was in there. So I had that little bit of money that I could live on with those, but it wasn't my bread and butter money. And then, at the end of 98, I sort of was in a bit of a, I was a bit stuck really because I didn't really know what I was going to do. And I played at Space a couple times, but not a lot, just a couple times and a few parties. This is in '98. And then I went back to London and I had my flat in Neasden. And I remember I was in my flat in Neasden and I get a call from Fritz. And he never called me when I was in London. Never. And he was like, Jonathan, yeah, Daniel Klein's not going to be coming back next year. Would you like to be the Space resident? And I was like, yes, of course I would. He goes, yeah, but you have to not tell anyone. You know, nothing's finalized yet. You need to keep it to yourself. You need to not tell anyone. And at that time, I'd been calling Moisey. I don't know if you remember Moisey from Coppers. And I've been I've been trying to get a job in there. And he was like, well, John, I don't know, because you can't do what he was doing in Simples here. You know, it's a different place. And I was like, no, it's okay. I'll prepare to work how you want it to work. He's like, okay, yeah, we can only offer you this kind of money. And I was a bit like, you know what, I want to come back to Ibiza. So, okay, I'll take the job. And then I got this call from Fritz. And then I was like, okay. So I didn't tell anyone. So I went out to Ibiza in '99. I got all my stuff ready, my apartment and whatnot. I had the apartment already kind of set. So I got my apartment set and ready and everything. And I'd go out there and I must have been out there in April. And Space opening party wasn't until the end of May and of that year. And then they were like, everyone was like, you know, what are you doing this year, John? Like, and I was like, oh, nothing. Well, I don't know. I'm just going to do it. Yeah, I don't know. And then when the start of May kicked in, you know, the posters started to arrive.
Yeah,
the posters were all over the place. And they were like, Jonathan Ulysses, resident DJ, alongside Daniel Klein, Jose Divina, and then whoever else was on the lineup. And then I always remember going to Space, walking in the office, and then Fritz was like, look, these are your cards. These are your Space cards. These are your business cards. Because everyone got a business card back then. And there was an orange business card. I must have one somewhere around here. An orange business card with the Space logo. And it had my name alongside the Space logo. And that was just like a wow moment for me. Because it was like, I'm actually a Space resident. I'm part of this massive I'm a part of it now. And then the funny thing was, we did the opening party of '99, and I'm trying to impress. I'd never really met Jose, and Daniel, although he did the opening party, he didn't do the season. And I had a meeting with Fritz, and he was like, okay, so in this club, we don't allow any drugs. Any DJ taking drugs will be fired instantly. Any staff member taking any drugs will be fired instantly. We do not tolerate that. And so, okay, don't worry. I don't really do drugs anyway. I smoked a bit of weed, and that was it. And then, so I'm trying to impress the guys, and they were like, oh yeah, roll this joint. So I was like, okay. So I'm in the DJ cabin, rolling this joint. And who should walk into the cabin? Fritz. Yeah. I was like, oh my God. And then Fritz just looked at me, looked down, looked at me, and just walked out. And then Jose Divina goes, I think you need to go and see Fritz right now. Like, you need to go and see him right now.
I bet you
just thought, oh my God, everything.
Hollow.
Everything's all sunk. My dream has come true, and I've messed it up.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No! No!
But I was just trying to impress, as I was with the other DJs. I want to be a part of the gang, like, you know what I mean?
Human nature, man.
Human nature.
Yeah.
So then I went into the office and I said, look, Fritz. And he was like, look, I told you. And I said, I know, but you know what? I'm just trying to impress the guys. They asked me to roll a joint. I rolled a joint. I wasn't smoking it. They asked me to roll it for them. And he was like, okay, do you know what? I'm going to give you this one chance. But if I ever catch you doing that again, you're out. You want to smoke a joint, take your joint, go outside the club, and you smoke outside the club. Don't ever let me see you doing that. And then after that, that's what I would do. Before I played my set, especially on the Sunday, for years, I'd go outside, roll a joint, smoke a joint, and then I'd come back in. I wouldn't do any drugs in the club ever. And from '99 to 2014, even though I played for club, for Space really since 97. You know, I played for the Space since 97, but my residency was in 99. I played 2 times in 98 until 2014. I never did any drugs. And that's how I got the residency at Space. How I managed to keep the residency, because obviously the club was growing and the contracts and everything about it was changing with the club. You know, musically, they sort of taught me, like, they'd say, look, you can't, when you come and play here, it's not like playing in the West End. People pay to come here. So in the West End, you can play, but people don't pay to go into the clubs, so they can leave when they want to leave. He was like, you know what, here, because people pay to come here, you have to play music differently. This is Pepe Roselló sitting in his office, and he's like, you have to mood the people, and you have to tell a story. You have to, sometimes you have to play the music to get them dancing, but sometimes you have to play music to let them relax, go to the bar, have a drink. You know, when you're DJing, you have to watch everything. You don't just watch the dance floor. Watch the security. Watch the bar. Are the bar staff dancing? Are they tapping? Are they moving? Are the security guys, are they tapping their feet? Watch the back. What are the people doing at the back? And you have to, you have to move the people. If you play all the big music all at once, then you make people sweat and dance and dance and dance and dance. But they're not drinking. You know, you want them to drink. So you need to sometimes bring it back and let them, okay, you may see the dance floor empty a little bit, but you know what? Let them go to the bar and have a drink. Then they come back and then they dance. Let them relax, let them sit, let them smoke, and then let them come back to the dance floor. So when you're DJing, think about the music. Don't just play the big music all the time. You have to take it down and make it relaxed. And in them days, you know, as a resident, you were playing 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 hours. You were warming up. And also they'd be like, you know, you're warming up for Svenvarf. You're warming up for Carl Pops. You're warming up for Claudio Cuccaluto. You're warming up for, you're doing Matinee. You're doing Manumission. And it's all different music. So sometimes you'd be inside playing heavy techno because you're coming on, you're warming up for Tala. Sometimes you've got to play kind of upstairs. So you've got to play kind of like soulful kind of stuff. And then you're on the terrace. And then you're playing, you're warming up for Chush and Chibillo. So you've got to have percussive music, drum, bass, Hispanic kind of music. And you're also playing at different parties. La Troya, in bed with Space on a Wednesday morning. You're playing at different parties. So you're playing different music all the time. So you have to have a very wide selection of music. Sometimes we're going to ask you to play. If someone doesn't turn up, you've got to play. You've got to play. Roger Sanchez doesn't turn up. You have to go and play. And you have to play like Roger Sanchez. Sometimes Tyler's not turning up. You have to play 2 hours inside techno, hard techno. Yeah, you have to have that music. So it was a big job as a resident DJ to be able to fit into what they wanted you to play, depending on the night.
That's a fascinating story. I've never heard you talk like that before. And that is the true art of a resident DJ. Yeah. And that is the true art of a warm-up DJ.
Yeah.
And I read an article literally 2 days ago about how that art has been lost.
Definitely. Because at the end of the day, I think the art's been lost partly because set times are so short. You can't come on before Steve Lawler and play all the big hits. Yeah. You know, that's for him to do. You've got to play stuff that he don't really know, but you've got to play it nice and easy, but you've got to keep the crowd. And then, so when he comes on, he can just go whoosh and take him where he wants to take him. Yeah. You don't want to come on and play better than the headliner.
Of course. So Pepe really gave you some amazing advice then.
He did.
Of really taking in the environment all around you. Yeah, I mean, I've never, ever heard it put like that. But Pepe was obviously a genius.
He is a genius.
Yeah.
He is a genius.
And, Space was always my favourite club. And it was always a weird experience going into Space because it always felt like it was brand new.
Yeah.
Every time you go in there, I don't know why.
Especially after Manumission when they just wrecked the club. Pepe used to hate Manumission because he goes, they just make the club so messy. And they have to take on extra cleaners to clean the club. and all the toys and the stuff that he would be like, oh, they just wrecked the club. But you know, it was a great party, and I didn't used to actually play that much for Manumission Carry On, just sometimes, and certain people didn't turn up, or I'd do the warm up, and then they would come in, and Alfredo and everyone would play, and you know, like David Morales would turn up and play, Danny Tenaglia would turn up and play. You know, it was kind of open and crazy, really. It was a wonderful time, and obviously the club changed over the years. You know, when it hit the 2000s, and then from about 2006, 2007, when 2000, I'd say probably anything, probably later than that, probably 2008, when the bosses changed. Fritz left. I think he went to America, and then Juan Arenas came in. Things really changed. But by then, Space had won the award for the best club for the first time in the world in DJ Magazine, and then it went on to win it 5 or 6 years in a row. And I was part of that, even though a very, very small part of that. But I was there when the club grew from being, especially when the internet kicked in and they started their website, and then they started doing tours and started to realize the interest of Space around the world. And it became not just a little club in Ibiza, it became global. It was frightening what a bigger monster it had become.
Yeah, and then
obviously the changing when you got to 2012, 13, when Ushuaia opened, and then the dynamics changed.
Yeah,
you know, first it was small little hotel that was across the road that was just a few parties that Luciano used to do, and then the next year it was like this massive metropolis.
Because Ushuaia started on the beach, didn't it?
Yeah,
it was a beach club.
It was a beach club. It was just a beach club with part of the hotel.
Yeah, I remember going down there, and Sven Vath was playing an after party for Cocoon, and it was absolutely mobbed. And
Luciano used to do parties there as well.
Yeah. And then I got really confused because like the next year it was like there's some sort of hotel there, and I was just like, I was really, really that era. I kind of moved on from Ibiza from them because obviously we were doing a lot of our morning events with the Dirty Rottens and the morning bands.
Yeah,
we couldn't do it. And obviously you did a lot of the morning stuff, didn't you? Like In Bed with Space and We Love and all of that lot.
Yeah,
and
Cafe Olé, Monday's Calling. Yeah. And you know, it really, you know. Yeah, the dynamics change. You know what? You know, the thing is about Ibiza, everything changes.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, you know, 2 words, but very simple words, and everything changes. And as much as Ushuaia and killing it now, you've got Universe coming around the corner, everything changes. Like Ibiza it's like a constantly moving machine that's constantly moving, and the movement of like O Beach and, you know, like, Universe that's coming in now, and you know, Ibiza Rocks, and you know, it's constantly moving, it's constantly changing, and sometimes if you don't embrace the change, you get lost. You know,
have you been to High?
Yes.
Is that a weird thing for you?
Well, actually, I played last year.
Oh, you played there?
Yeah, I played last year. I played in the toilets with Jason.
It's mental down there, isn't it?
On Fisher's Night, yeah. And actually, when I walked in the back way, it's actually the same layout as Space, pretty much. Like, and I walked into the back, and I was like, "Oh, this is exactly how Space was." And it's the same layout. It's just, you know, they probably knocked down a couple of walls and made things, but it's the same layout. And when you go in there, especially when you go in the back, you see it's the same back as Space was. You had the staff area where people would sit and have their lunch, and then used to go into the back, into the main room. So it's kind of the same, really. It's not, if you can, the thing is, I didn't get to, because I started the warm-up set, I didn't get to walk around the club. And then by the time it was time to walk around the club, it was too packed, it was too busy, and we left.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the layout is pretty much the same layout. And do you know what? It will be the same for Universe. It will be this, because I spoke to Charlie, and he sort of said to me that it's the same layout with regard to although these places have been taken over, they can't sort of knock down
certain
walls.
Yeah,
they can't knock down certain walls. They've got to keep certain parts of it the same, with the same framework.
So you're gonna have the Circo Loco, the main arena, the Coco Loco room. Then there was the music box. Was it called?
The dome.
Yeah, and the dome. And I actually posted last night on One More Time Ibiza a recent update photo of it, and they're getting on with it. And it looks.
I need to speak to Charlie, see if I can get in there. Really, to be fair, like I could do one of them back rooms on one of these parties at the back room.
2025 is a big time of change with Universe. There's going to be, and me and Nick are quite excited because obviously, when there is change, there's always opportunities open up, and I think there's going to be a lot of brand shuffling this year.
I think
DJs are going to be jumping all over the place.
I think Paradise are going there. I've seen that.
Yeah,
and I think
Elro
as well are going there.
I think they're going to be moving Fisher over from High because I think he was too much in demand. There, and a couple of other of their acts, but they're kind of competing against themselves now, aren't they?
A little bit, yeah.
But they're clever, so
I'm sure they'll
put it off. But I've got absolutely no doubts about that whatsoever. But I'm excited for it. Weirdly, I was excited when COVID happened because I thought, do you know what? Things are going to change, and because when things go on for years, year in year out, the same old thing, same thing, it can get stuck in a rut, and and you can't break that. And Ibiza can be very political as well. So when there is things that start to move around, people get a little bit more relaxed and okay, we'll try that. Whereas a couple of years ago, no, we're fine, thanks. So we're looking forward to this year. We've got a lot going on. Another thing, how did you start DJing? You didn't start in Ibiza like Tristan.
No.
Well before, yeah.
Well, basically, so going right back, my brother, who, God rest his soul, passed away many years ago. He was murdered, but that's another story.
Okay.
He used to do what we used to call sound systems. When I was growing up, what they would do is they'd have a couple of guys that have speakers, a couple of guys that have an equalizer, an amp, a couple of guys that have some wires, a guy would have a van.
I remember.
And it would be like you'd go to like a roller skate park and you'd put all that stuff up and you play dub plates. And used to have Saxon and Coxsone, which were like the big, massive reggae sound systems back then. We're talking in the 70s. So we're going right back to the 70s. But my brother was a smaller scale of that, but they would play Rare Groove, which is old soul music.
Okay.
Like Bobby Womack and Mr. Fix-It and old rare 70s soul stuff.
Wow.
And he used to, I was too young to go to the parties, but I know that he did those parties. And so he would like have a deck it was a Syntronic deck as well, not Techniques in them days. It was Syntronic belt drive decks.
Yep.
And it would be only one deck. And so he would have one of those in the house, and he'd have all his music there. And it was always something that kind of interested me. And then when I sort of hit about, after he passed away, I was 13. I had two mates, Nicky and Mikey, who I'm still good friends with now. We set up our own sort of sound system, like one speaker, a couple of wires. We were too young to drive a van, so we'd get my brother to hire a van and we'd pay for that. And then we would do parties, little parties at people's houses, birthday parties, christenings and whatnot. And we'd just do little parties, probably from about the age of 13, 14, first to our friends. But then when we hit sort of like 16, 17, we'd then do like my sister's parties, my sister's birthday parties, christenings and things like that for my nieces and nephews. And then we'd have, and that's kind of how, so that's how I knew how to use the equipment. But as the time went on, that without going too much into my own upbringing, but, you know, with the death of my brother, I ended up moving from South London and moving to Northwest London. And, you know, I may have had my own issues at the time. You know, I was a bit of a bad kid running around, carrying knives and doing naughty stuff. And going in the wrong direction, basically. So, but then I moved up to Northwest London, and I sort of stopped DJing, although I knew how to use the equipment. So then for a period, I was working in Safeways in a shoe shop. I became the manager of a shoe shop and whatnot. And me and my boys, we still did parties. We did people's birthday parties and things like that. But, you know, we'd have, you know, 2 decks, old belt drive decks and an amp. And, you know, we'd have to carry all the stuff in. We used to be called Soul Plus because we play soul music and a bit of hip hop and a bit of reggae and that kind of thing. And like, we'd all specialize in certain sort of styles. I'd specialize in the rare groove. Michael would specialize in the new sort of like newer soul stuff, Luther Vandross, that kind of thing. And Nicky he was a Greek guy, would concentrate on the reggae side of things. So we'd all do like a little hour each and play, you know, different kinds of music for the crowds. So then after a while, I sort of kind of grew out of that thing. So they kind of carried on doing it down South London. I kind of drifted away from it a little bit, if I'm honest with you, but I always say that being a DJ followed me around. Even when I didn't want to do it, it was always there. It was always my salvation. It was always my meal. It was always my rescuer. It was always the thing that was always there. Even when I didn't want it to be there, it was always there. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
it was always part of my life without me asking it to be. So I knew that it was like a brother that was a Siamese twin that was next to me. It just wouldn't go away, no matter what.
I have the same thing with promoting.
Exactly.
It's in your blood.
It's in your blood.
I can't get away from it.
Exactly.
I've been doing this all my life. My dad was doing it it was in raves when I was a kid. And no matter what, someone said it's just in your blood. And no matter how far I go into like digital marketing or other work,
it's always there.
I'm always drifting back into it.
You turn around and there it is.
And now bigger than that and bigger and more than ever now. It's just like,
I'll always be playing music, even if I'm just playing music in my house. I'll always have music around me, and I'll always have music around me, and not just one type of music. I like all kinds of music. So then when I was at Club 1830, I was at Club 1830 from...
were you a rep?
I was a rep, yeah.
I didn't know that until yesterday. Yeah, I didn't know. I knew Tristan was. I knew Jay Moore was. I knew Martin was. I knew Julian was. I didn't know you were. Because one of my questions was, what was your first job in Ibiza? And that must have been it, yeah?
That was it, yeah. It was in 91. I was
1991?
92. Sorry, 92.
It's the same time as Shaggy and all those guys.
Yeah, I was around in them days. So I was a part of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's and so that was your first job. And what? And
so,
then the simples.
Yeah, so I just want to go back to what we were chatting about, just so we got a picture. So basically, while I was a rep, like we used to do an excursion called the barbecue, and on the barbecue they had decks there, and on the decks they'd have loads of old records like Kylie Minogue, Dexter Duck Runners, and whatnot. And I would get on at the end of the night, the reps would have to DJ, but a lot of the reps that were there didn't know how to use the equipment. I couldn't really rock the crowd, but I knew the records, all the 80s stuff, Spandau Ballet and all that. I knew them all because, I grew up around that.
Yeah.
They'd have the records there, and then I'll DJ. So I would get up and I would DJ. I'd get on the mic and I'd be like, right, all the people from the north, all the people from the south, all the people from Scotland and whatever. And then I'd play all the music, and our barbecue was always packed. Everyone was always dancing. And people would be like, wow, John's like a really good DJ, like as well as being a rep. That wasn't part of my job. But again, as I said, it always followed me around. So I would do it. And our barbecues are always the busiest barbecues at the end of the night. So I would DJ basically for the last couple of hours and send everyone on the coaches. Then we'd all go to Eden, which then was called Chaos. So again, the DJ followed me around. And then when I came back, when I left Club 1830 and then I came back to Ibiza, I didn't have a job. I didn't know what I was going to do. I got a job at, but again, I make my own luck. I put myself in play too. I got on the mic, I danced around, and then people noticed me. And then this guy, Chaz, was like, would you like to come and get a job in Ecstasis, the old Ecstasis?
Oh, my Lord.
Yes.
Yeah. So a few parties there.
Yeah, and a great club.
Yeah.
Great club, like more than a better after hours club than it was a nightclub.
That's what we did, the after pack. We smashed it there. We made
it's wicked. It's wicked.
Those little steps.
Those little steps.
Oh, my God.
The cushions. Cushions.
Oh, yeah.
The DJ stand was awful because it faced the wall, like, which is ridiculous. It was like DJ stand that faced the wall. DJ stand should be facing the people. But anyway, I couldn't, although I could DJ, I couldn't mix. And the guy that was the resident hated me. This English guy, black guy, can't mix. And I tried to mix, and it was like, and he'd be stood at the side going, oh, to the bosses, look at him, he can't mix, he's rubbish. Then they got rid of me. And then after about a month, but then I was in the West End, and this is all about making your own luck again. Bumped into Julian. Julian was like, oh, my DJ is a nightmare. This is at Simples at the time.
Yep.
He's a nightmare. He comes in, he sits down all night, he drinks, he gets drunk, doesn't do anything. So I had an argument with him and kicked him out. Do you want a job in Simples? And I was like, oh, yeah, I would, yeah. He goes, and then I'm like, yeah, but, you know, what about Club 1830? You know, the relationship with Rex and Club 1830, and, you know, it might be a problematic. And I always remember he was like, leaned forward and went, leave it to me. Don't worry about that. And then, then I got my job at Simples. And then at Simples, I learned my apprenticeship, learned to mix, learned about house music, learned about classic house music, the old school I learned about house music. And I made a point of diving myself into learning about the history of house music, the future of house music, the current artists. And over the years, I learned to mix. I learned to mix on 3 decks. I learned to mix on 4 decks. I learned how to control my voice and the microphone. I learned how to control the crowd, how to keep the crowd. Because as I was saying earlier, people don't pay to go into Simples, so they can walk out. And I made a few mistakes. And then we did lots of different things, but I learned my apprenticeship as to be a DJ. I would always say in Simples, how to be a proper DJ. And then when I went to Space, I learned how to be a different kind of DJ.
I've never heard any of this, and you know what? You're answering all my questions as well, because I was about to say, what was your? I knew you had a role in Simples. It moved to Soul City. Was that in your time?
No, another story.
It's still simple. I still call it Simples. It's still
so
simple.
basically, it was Simples when I was there from 93 to 98. It was Simples from 93 to about 95, 96. Okay. All right. Then I come up with the idea of changing it to Simple Art Club. And I said, you need to call it an art club, get different kind of stuff. We need to, it was looking a bit tired and a bit shabby. So it needs to be painted. So we called it Simple Art Club. And then obviously when Manumission started, Manumission used to clear out the whole of San Antonio. So, and then Cream came. Because in them days, you'd have one big night. Yeah. Monday was Manumission, Tuesday was God Kitchen, Wednesday was Clockwork Orange, Thursday was Cream. Friday was Ministry.
Yeah.
You know, and it was more about the nights, not the DJs then.
The brands itself.
The brands. It was about the promotions, not about the DJs then. And then, but Manumission would clear everyone out. And so I'd be like, you know what, we've got to do something different. So what we'll do is, from now on a Monday and a Thursday, you know, I used to have all these soul records. Soul, R&B, hip-hop, reggae, ragga, drum and bass that I would sometimes play. And no one else had those music. So I said, you know what, Julian, let's change it and let's do Mondays, call it Soul Train, Thursdays, Soul Train, because then you're appealing to people that aren't going to go to Manumission. that don't like house music. You're going to appeal to people that like R&B, hip hop, drum and bass. So that was the first time we started doing that. So we called it Soul Train. I designed the poster with some artists around the side, and then Soul Train, and with me as the DJ. And then every Monday and Thursday we would do that. And where everyone else was dead because all they played was house, because we were playing different music, we were always busy on those 2 nights.
Okay.
And then people would come in and go on the Wednesday and go, "Oh, aren't you playing R&B and hip hop?" No, we only do that on a Thursday and a Monday. Because I taught Horse how to mix R&B and hip hop.
Yeah, I love Horse.
He love him. He couldn't
Yeah,
mix
he's great.
R&B and hip hop. And in them days, you had the old Denon mixer.
Yeah.
Push and pull. And I sort of said to him, "Right, bruv, you know, you can't be in here mixing R&B and it's not smooth. Because if it's just you dropping everything in, it's a bit, you've got
All
to
over
keep
the
it,
place. Yeah.
you've got to keep it smooth, man. Keep the people together. Keep them dancing. Don't stop them their rhythm." And I taught him how to mix. I showed him how to mix on the Denon. Then I said, Horse does 7 days a week. I will bring in 2 other DJs. And then I went into DJ Magazine, put an ad in DJ. They gave me a budget, put an ad in DJ Magazine. R&B hip hop DJs wanted for Ibiza. Call this number. Then a couple of guys called me. I come and met them. And then I got Neil P and another guy, were the first guys that I got. And then I got a couple of other guys over the years for them. And then I said, right, what you need to do is change decor as well. So I sent them pictures of artists. Barry White, Mariah Carey, Rihanna. Yeah. So I said, you need to change these pictures, change the pictures, and you need to change the decor, change the colours. So I would come over in the winter, because in them days I would sign on. Yeah.
Yes, I remember those days.
Yeah, for my
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called in Spanish.
It's like the doll. It's like the Spanish version of the doll, isn't it? Or,
Spanish version of the doll.
Yeah, I've signed on all the time.
Yeah, so I would
And you
fly
said-
back in January, sign on, and I'd have a couple of meetings. I'd have a meeting with Space, and I'd have a couple of, and I'd sort of bring the stuff over, and then I come back. One time I came back in April, May, they'd redone the whole bar. They'd put up the double doors. They'd changed the structure. The DJ's always been in the same place, that they've risen it up.
Yeah.
Put a couple more podiums. Bar, they opened it up at the back. They put the bar at the back.
Yeah.
Then they had the pictures, changed the lighting, and from then, it's just gone from strength to strength.
It went mental, didn't it? It was so busy for so many years, and Julian always out there with his window, and it was yeah. I mean, Julian was my first boss, and I spent a lot of time in Simples.
Yeah.
I even remember watching the football in there.
Yeah.
World Cup at 6 o'clock in the morning when it was being played somewhere. But
I mean, the thing is, with Simples, I still have an affiliation with it now, but not as much as I used to, because I don't really go in there so much now, because I think Policy and the guys that are there, they do their thing. And I didn't bring Policy in that in, but Policy and those guys, they took it to the next level. But obviously on the internet come into play, having a website, being online, having a Twitter page and all this kind of thing. And they kind of manage that fantastically. But, that is kind of like one of my legacies for me. A lot of people don't know it, but it was me that set up Soul C.
See, this is why I wanted to ask you the question, because I've heard that.
All right.
I've heard that, and I've heard you had so much to do with it. And a lot of the reason why I wanted to speak to you today actually was because I wanted to know that background of Space, and I wanted to know the background of Simples, because I know you as a mate, but I've never had these conversations with you.
No.
And I was just about to ask, what would you say has been like the most defining moment of your music career, besides the residency at Space, which is probably a no-brainer, isn't it?
I mean, it depends, really. There's been so many moments, like, Simples being one, doing Twice as Nice, bringing Twice as Nice to Ibiza in someone for the first time. That was me. Like the first kind of, because again, it was a stage where music was changing, and I was going out in London and listening to a lot of garage, going to La Cosa Nostra, Twice as Nice. And I wanted to be a part of bringing that into Ibiza, because I felt it needed a bit of a change. And so alongside Bobby and Steve and Michael, we brought Twice as Nice to Summum. And that ran for 3 years. And then they moved on to doing Eden and Es Paradise. That's another legacy. Obviously, a legacy for me being at Space and a lot of people say that Carl Cox is the longest resident at Space, but I was actually working at Space before Carl Cox did Revolution.
How many years were you there?
Well, if you look at
16,
it,
17 or something like that.
yeah, I mean, if you look at it from 98,
Yeah.
you know, from 98 doing, I mean, really, I played there in 97. I wasn't resident then. And I played there a couple of times in 98. And I got the residency in 99. And then
Were you there to the close, to the end of it?
No, I was there until 2014.
Okay.
And then it closed in 2016. I'd left in 2014 because I stopped doing We Love in 2013. And then I went back to do Monday's Calling on 2014. And then, you know, obviously by then I got married the year previous. I had my 2 children.
Life changes.
Couldn't keep on coming and going. And I had to either be in Ibiza or be in England.
Of course. No, I totally get that. I mean, myself, Dean, Tristan, we all had kids and everything changed.
Everything changes. You know, you can't live that life anymore because you just can't continue being like that. You know, you have to make a sacrifice really. And, you know, my boy was going to school, Hayden was going to nursery, and he was starting to speak Catalan and Spanish in the school. He was only 4, but, you know, my mum was still alive then, God rest her soul. My Camilla's mum's still alive, and it would have been, I think, for us to give up on England would have been a big decision for us to be like, we're going to be there permanently.
Camilla's got a career as well.
Camilla's got a career, she's a hairdresser, and she's a couple of other little businesses going on as well.
Yeah.
So it was just a matter of like, you know what's going to be better for us? And you know, the only thing for me, I sometimes think, I mean, there's nothing to say we wouldn't come back. I still own a property in Ibiza that I bought in 2005 with the help of Shaggy, and I own it with Terry, my mate, Terry. You know Terry.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so I still own a property in Ibiza, so there's nothing to say that I wouldn't come back and live there. But, you know, I just think when the boys come to a sort of like after nursery and school age, you have to make that decision of where you're going to be. And you have to know that you're going to be, for the next at least 20 years, you're going to be settled in one place so they can get their education and they can thrive in life. They need to be, you know, they need stability, you know.
One thing about our community is, I said this to Tristan, yes, I think we're like, all of us are all still in touch with each other.
Yeah.
And I've got people from school and college and who I was really tight with, and I haven't spoken to them for years, but I'm still in regular touch with so many of that core Ibiza, like late 90s, 2000s people. And it's just like, it's a very unique family. And very, very, we've been through we were very lucky because it was just an incredible era.
I mean, could you imagine like Brexit when we were there? Like, could you imagine what a nightmare that would have been for us? It would have just ended everything for us. Like,
well, I said, Tristan, I think one of my first questions with him was same for you. Could you imagine Club 18 to 30 today? Like the bar crawl was 500 people, like 20 reps trying to control 500 people from the bar crawl. Things that went on.
You know, the black money, the black money, the clicking of people coming in and out of each bar.
And the behaviour and the antics.
Yeah, the antics.
It would be, and it was starting to get into the papers. I remember that in the mid 2000s, there was like, they started to slip into the papers, and there's no social media then, but I remember reading in the Daily Star and the Sun about 18 to 30, blah, blah, blah. But Ibiza was kind of our little secret, wasn't it? And then social media came along, and I always say it was like social media allowed it to extend into other people's foresight,
the thing is, now I think it's now, because of social media, it's become international. Like
everyone knows about it and wants a part of it.
People from Australia or New Zealand or Brazil, we're going to Europe. You know what? Let's just go and spend a couple of days in Ibiza, where they probably wouldn't have done that years ago.
We were all working there for a reason. Everyone had some sort of little story behind why they were there. They were running away from something, or they didn't fit in, or they just wanted some excitement, and they found themselves in this family in San Antonio, especially for me. And it was just, I'm still regularly in touch with these people. And the
Yeah.
great thing about this with the September event with Kevin and Perry, which you played at,
Yes.
they're all coming back for it.
Yeah.
You know? And
Yeah.
and it's more and more people every year are now coming back for Kevin and Perry on that week. So I love that. And that's why we're going to try. I'm going to try and invigorate the Ibiza worker group a little bit over the next months to really bring some more life into it and bring some people over. Just quickly, tell me about you've got a huge DJ career, but you've obviously got your record label as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we haven't spoken about. Like, you know,
Yeah.
when we talk about milestones, it's like, you know, I've
proudest releases and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've released music on some like Azuli, Tool Rooms, Nervous. I've worked with the likes of James Herb, Proc and Fitch, Matt Schwartz, you know, Tom Starr over the years. And, you know, I always remember when the first Space opening where they did the car park.
Wow.
And Carl Cox was playing. And there was a track that I did called The Voice that was on Azuli Records. And I'm talking to this girl and then suddenly the drums come in and I was like, that's my record. And I ran up to Carl and they were like, no, you can't go in. I said, no, I'm the DJ, I'm the resident. And then I went, this is my record. He went, John, I've been playing this record. And that again was a remarkable moment. And then looked up, you know, you got like 5,000 people there just like jamming to my record, you know, like mixing the Space compilations. I mixed 3 of them. I mixed Ministry of Sound compilation. I mixed about 5 In Bed with Space compilations. I mixed the Hack Club compilation. You know, I mixed a few. So music moments. I've had loads of them. Still releasing music on my label now. I'm actually going in the studio with Dave K next week. I haven't really done anything over January, but you know, I had a couple of releases last year. And Mark Knight was smashing one of my tracks. And he sent me a video of him playing. It must have been 20,000 people there, and he played my record, and I was just like seeing the video and I was like, oh my God, like, so musical milestone moments for me at the moment. I've got the label and I'm working with new artists.
Yeah.
It's only a small label and I kind of like it like that.
Yeah.
You know,
I remember Donna.
She used to work for me. That's right.
I remember her bouncing around Bora Bora with the label T-shirt on.
Oh, Unibug.
Yeah, that's it. And it's been going a long time, and you know, like keeping labels running.
It's hard. And yeah, if I'm honest with you, they don't really make, my label doesn't really make a lot of money, but it's not about, it's for the love of it. And to be honest with you, it's about introducing new artists to the framework. I've had some Peter Brown's released on there, JC, Jason By, Dave K, John Steele, like Lizzie Curious, you know, artists that go on to do their own thing. You know what I mean? Cry IT, he did my remix last year. And I'm the Dolly Rockers, who are now Odyssey Inc., Sam Dungay, so it's about sort of, you know, some artists can't get a look in, and I know what it's like. Some artists cannot get a look in with any labels because they haven't got anything, like, you know, they haven't got any history. They've got this, the first, second track. They've just done a couple of bootlegs, you know, and I'll be like, well, come release on my label, and at least you can say, well, I've got a release on Unibug Records. It's out there. It's on Spotify. It's on Beatport. It's on Traxsource. It's on all these formats that you can use to promote yourself, you know. And at the moment, like, you know, I've got like Lee Drift. I've got some tracks coming from Lee Drift. I've got one coming from Zach Linnaeus. I've got one coming from Dave. Another one coming from Dave K. So for me, it's like Dave is an example of an artist who's come to me with his first release. He's done 7 releases on the label, but now he's growing and he's doing lots of stuff. He just had a top 10 on Lizzie Curious's label, Curious Energy, in Beatport. So he's an artist that's growing, that started with us. And there's many, many artists that have done that. Like Chelsea Sings, another one that's released on my label, who's an artist, big artist anyway, but he's growing And a lot of these artists are growing bigger and bigger, but they can always come to me, release on my label. I'll get right behind it. I'll put a little bit of money behind it. I'll put it out there. So they've got the framework, they've got the format to say that they'd had release on this label, because a lot of artists don't get that.
It's so difficult.
It's so difficult.
I was reading some stats the other day that more tunes were released a week than there was in the entire year of 1999.
Yeah. I mean, there's something like 500. There's probably like 500 different releases a week. That's just in house music.
Yeah. I think it's in the thousands across Beatport.
Yeah, probably in the thousands. Probably.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Some of the
maybe five. To be honest with you, probably 500 a day.
Yeah, I'd say so.
600 a day.
I would say so. It's I read some stats a while ago, and it was just like, wow. I mean, how are you going to break through here?
Exactly. I think sometimes to break through, you've got to be in with a clique. You've got to be a particular talented artist, but you've got to also a little bit of luck. You've got to make your own luck.
Yeah.
You've got to be in with a certain clique of people or clique of a label, and to get a release on Defected or to get a release on Tool Rooms, you can't just come out of the woodwork and just get a release like that. You know what I mean?
Or it's got to be a really good track. It's got
to be a really, really good track.
Yeah. It's going back to your DJ work as well. You're still doing a lot of UK work as well. Yes. A lot of festivals coming up this summer.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I'm doing Proper Fest. I'm doing actually, I'm not doing Clockwork this year because they're not doing a festival.
Yeah.
And I've got gigs coming up. I mean, I need to check my diary because I can't really think. I've got so many bits and bobs coming up.
Yeah.
But gigs wise, last year I had a really, really busy year. I did Street Beats and Eats Festival. I did Clockstart. I did House and Classics. So. And Southport Festival. So, like, I just did New Zealand. So I was in New Zealand on New Year's Eve.
Wow!
And I did the High Life Festival. It took me 24 hours to get there. I was there for 24 hours, and then it took 24 hours to get home.
And what sort of sound are you playing these days?
At the moment, I'm sort of like. I mean, I'm getting booked obviously because I'm sort of part of that kind of old school.
Yeah.
DJ, I'm getting booked and I'm playing a lot of sort of like old school stuff, but revamped, re-rubbed. That's what I'm getting booked for. Yeah. But alongside that, I'm still playing like that funky sort of sound, Kasim, that sort of sound, that kind of like funky driving, pumping sort of sound, like, you know what I mean? Like Hugel, Roger Sanchez, James Herr, Mark Knight. I'm still playing that kind of sound, which is, if you listen to my show, I've got my own show on the Saturday Shuffle on Release Radio.
Well, we'll put it in the links below.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I know our audience loves your stuff.
Thank you. I mean, I've always enjoyed playing it one more time. I always have. And, I remember not last year, the year before last, I did for K Class. Yes. I came on before K Class, and they come up to me and they were like, you know what, the way that you've played was incredible, John. Like, you really moved the crowd. You just took them up and 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 up, and then bang, like, and he. I spoke to him afterwards. I saw him at Street Beats and Eats Festival, and he's like, that set was probably one of the best sets he'd heard all year.
I've heard very good feedback from that set, and not just from one person. I've heard from a few people that exact set. So and not from Claycars, from Nick, from other people as well.
Right.
Other people thought that as well.
And that means a lot because I don't go out to do that and to look credit for that, but I appreciate that people see that a lot of thought goes into it. It's not just turning up and just playing. A lot of thought goes. No. That record's going to go with that record. That record's going to go with that record. But you also got to think about the crowd that's in front of you, and bit like that sort of saying, going right back to what I was saying about Pepe,
Yeah.
Roselló, and having that chat with Pepe. And, you know, sometimes, you know, you've got the crowd in front of you and something's not working and you might have to change it. Sometimes you might not have to change it, but you've got to keep it the same and just trust in your own vision that you're doing it like this for a reason. I'm playing that because I know that they're going to go and have a drink. But towards the latter part of my set, I want to have the crowd in front of me. So I want to just build them up to it. So I might start off a little bit on a high, take them down a little bit, let them have a drink, and then towards the latter part of my set, bring them right back up again.
Yeah.
And it's just that space thing that's always with me.
And you think that's kind of why 28 years later, I think from your first Space set, you're still relevant. You're still there. You're still getting booked. You're still playing regularly. And it's a lot to do with that mentality and that, because a lot of people from your era who are DJing, they don't DJ no more, you know?
Yeah.
You must have seen that.
I have seen that.
There is a core group that have still continued and who've grinded it through. But then when it went digital, everyone was DJing. And it opened the door, didn't it?
And also I think, you know, with certain changes within the law about, you know, not smoking inside clubs, and also we're talking about in the UK, and then in Europe, not smoking inside the clubs, and then DJs being in bars. So, you know, people were staying in bars and not going in clubs. So many clubs closing down, especially in the UK that used to be here that are gone. I think that's also a part of it. And I think the crash of 2010, I always remember the crash of 2010 and, you know, loads of bookings being cancelled, loads of people going, you know, loads of clubs closing down, you know, as I say, the changing in the laws. And then, you know, people going, you know, it's really, really tough out there. And at that time I was in Ibiza and I didn't see that. But I didn't notice it because it was in our little bubble and I didn't see that. I was DJing every day. I was like, at that time, you know, I'd literally fly out to Austria on a Friday, fly to Germany on a Saturday, get the first flight out, Space on a Sunday, then do the opening of the terrace, then do the evening, and then DC10 on the Monday, then Salvation on the Tuesday, and so on. And it's just every day I was DJing every single day, so it didn't matter then. But then when things did sort of change, when I noticed, for me, it changed more in 2012 when I started to notice that, you know, I wasn't getting booked by Garland's and I wasn't getting booked by Pam's house. And I was like, and then I started to notice that the change, you know, but then obviously COVID. We all had our issues with COVID, and that's 2020, 2021.
It was 19. We did our first one more time. Then it was 2020, March 2020. We had the first Kevin and Perry all booked and paid for, and then boom, and we were like, and then we re-announced it twice. We thought it was going to happen. And oh my god.
Yeah, I was booked for We Are Festival, and all my bookings were cancelled, like all of them. And We Are Festival was done.
Ibiza closed for 2 years, didn't it?
Ibiza closed for 2 years, man, and it was. I mean, that's the one time that I had not been back to Ibiza since 1991. That's the only 2 years that I'd never been. Every year, even after I stopped going, I always went back to Ibiza for something.
And I think that was a big issue for independent promoters because many of them went bust in that time, and not a lot of them come out of COVID strong, and like people like One More Time and Nick come through, and we now see that the majority of the events within Ibiza are corporate, right? You know, and there's not a lot of brands left, and there's a lot of DJ led only events, and that's why I'm doing this podcast, because One More Time has a really good community, and they want to know more about what we do. And they want to know more about you guys. And I thought, why not?
Why not?
You know? And so we've been chatting for well over an hour now. Wow. And I want to, you've literally answered every question I was going to answer anyway. And I want to just ask you one question, and which we always end up. The podcast is called One More Tune. what would be your one more tune of the night if you had to pick one? Vicky Devine almost had a cardiac the other day when I asked her this because she's like got about 10.
I've got about 10.
You're another one, are you?
I probably would pick Morale's Grooves.
Oh my God. It's one of the first ever pieces of vinyl I bought.
Yeah. I bought that off from Smoking. I bought that off of Joe Mills.
No.
Yeah, when she used to work in a record shop in Kensington High Street, or just off Kensington High Street. And I didn't know her then, but I didn't know her then.
Joe yesterday.
Did you?
Yeah, so it's Joe yesterday.
I always say that to her, like when I see her, like, you know, like I bought Morale's Grooves. She used to work in this record shop in Kensington. It was on a white label then.
Then it went on to Strictly or
went on to Strictly.
Yes, it
and
did.
Then it went to Positiva.
And one of the first, I bought mine in Bluebird Records.
Right.
Do you remember Bluebird?
I do. Yeah,
and,
I do remember Bluebird.
Then
and there was one in Edgware Road as well, Bluebird.
I didn't know at the time, but I was also buying music from Clara da Costa in Croydon.
Right, okay.
Wax, is it Wax Records?
Right, okay.
Swag.
Yeah.
Swag Records.
Swag, yeah, that's right.
And I always remember seeing this girl behind the counter there. And I realised many years ago, that it was obviously Clara. You know,
yeah.
She went over to
Ibiza, and she has her own story, Miss Bisto.
Yeah, I spoke to Clara as well yesterday, funny enough, because I'm hopefully going to be having them all come on and discuss similar sort of stories as well.
Yeah, I remember her as well, you know, back in the day, like
little baby.
She's only like 15 or something like that. She was like 15 or 14.
And she's still there?
She's still there. She's a fighter, man, that girl. I know she had some issues with her legs and stuff like that. She's really ill and stuff. But again, you know, she's a fighter. She's still out there and a great DJ too.
Absolutely.
You know, she can drop them. She can drop them classics. She can drop that deep sort of house sort of sound.
We've booked her a few times. Yeah, we've booked her a few times.
She's got a radio show.
That's been going for ages.
And the thing is, it's so hard to stay relevant in this industry. It really is, especially as you say, everyone's a DJ. Like everyone's a DJ, everyone's an MC. Like, but so for us older guys that have got history, it is hard to stay relevant. But you know what? You just got to take every step a day at a time.
Every move, you've got to consistency, just keep on going at it.
Yeah, just keep plugging at it. Totally.
And it can be a really cutthroat industry. It can be, awful sometimes, know, and because it is run by ego. And we all know this. And people they'll chuck you under a bus, and for not a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I think you've got to have a real thick skin as a promoter, as a DJ, as a venue owner, as anything nowadays. So, that's your final tune, Morale's Grooves. Wasn't the other side really good as well?
Yeah, it was. I can't remember what it is though.
The B side.
Yeah. I mean,
I remember both tracks were absolutely phenomenal.
There's so many. You know, and there are so many out there, like, but for me, it's Morale's Grooves or God May Be Funky, MD Express.
Awesome.
Another one,
awesome.
Like, you just.
I'm sure we'll get to hear some of them with you one more time this summer, Jonathan.
Yes,
anyway,
yes.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
It's been great. I mean, I really wanted to really understand the roots of some of those stories, and you've done that fabulously. And I've really enjoyed our chat.
Are you going to be coming over for all of the one more times, or just a couple?
I'm going to come over for as many as I can. It's just difficult, with I've got the new baby.
Cute.
And we've got the two boys, and you know what it's like having a family, and it's very difficult. And living in Croatia as well, getting there is a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Which way do you have to go?
Oh my God! Sometimes to Austria, sometimes to Germany, sometimes the layout. It can be a right old mission, and it's a problem. But I want to be over there as much as I can. And by the time this comes out, all of our dates will be released, and we'll be on our way through the summer.
Okay,
Jonathan, you're a legend. Thank you
so much.